The long-simmering shadow war between Iran and Israel has erupted into a direct and dangerous confrontation, shaking the foundations of Middle Eastern stability. For years, these two regional powers have engaged in a clandestine struggle, marked by covert operations, cyber attacks, and proxy conflicts. However, the events of the past few days represent a dramatic departure from this unspoken arrangement. The core of this escalation lies in Israel's profound and long-standing fear of a nuclear-armed Iran. Israeli leaders have repeatedly stated that they will not allow Tehran to acquire nuclear weapons, which they view as an existential threat to their nation's survival and security. This singular focus has driven much of Israel's foreign and military policy for decades. On Friday, June 13, 2025, Israel decided to act on these fears with overwhelming force. It launched a massive air offensive codenamed Operation Rising Lion. The stated objective was clear and ambitious: to cripple Iran's nuclear program and set it back by several years. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahou declared that the strikes were a necessary defensive measure, designed to neutralize a threat before it could fully materialize. This preemptive doctrine is not new for Israel, but its application on such a scale against the sovereign territory of Iran is unprecedented. The operation was not just a military strike. It was a powerful and unequivocal message that Israel's red lines had been crossed. The Israeli government asserted that it had received new intelligence indicating that Iran was on the verge of a significant breakthrough in its military nuclear capabilities. This intelligence, they claimed, necessitated immediate and decisive action. The strikes were meticulously planned, targeting a wide array of sites across Iran. They aimed not only at nuclear facilities, but also at the command and control structures of the Iranian military, including the powerful Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. By targeting the very heart of Iran's defense establishment, Israel sought to deliver a blow that would be felt for years to come, degrading Iran's ability to project power across the region. This bold move, however, carried immense risks. It shattered the fragile and unstated rules of engagement that had previously governed the conflict. The decision to strike directly at Iranian soil, rather than through proxies or in third countries like Syria, was a calculated gamble. Israel was betting that a swift, powerful blow would deter Iran from further nuclear advancement and a major retaliation. However, it also opened the door to a full-blown regional war, a scenario that leaders around the world have long feared. The international community watched with bated breath, understanding that the actions of that Friday could reshape the entire geopolitical landscape of the Middle East. The Israeli offensive was extensive and precise. Israeli jets, reportedly operating with near impunity over Iranian skies, struck more than 400 targets. The capital, Tehran, was a primary focus, with 40 targets hit within the city itself. These included the headquarters of Iran's Defense Ministry and the Organization of Defensive Innovation and Research, a body sanctioned by the West for its alleged role in nuclear weapons development. Key military figures were also targeted, resulting in the deaths of several high-ranking commanders, including General Mohammad Bagheri, the chief of Iran's armed forces, and General Hossein Salami, the powerful leader of the Revolutionary Guard. This decapitation strike aimed to sow chaos within Iran's military leadership. Iran's response was not long in coming. Vowing a powerful and decisive response, Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei unleashed True Promise Operation 3. In the hours and days that followed, Iran launched hundreds of ballistic missiles and explosive drones toward Israel. The skies over major Israeli cities like Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, and Haifa lit up with the streaks of interceptor missiles from Israel's Iron Dome and Arrow defense systems. Air raid sirens blared continuously, forcing millions of Israelis to seek shelter. The sheer scale of the Iranian barrage was designed to overwhelm Israel's sophisticated air defenses, a test of will and technological capability played out in real time above terrified civilian populations. The damage on both sides was significant. In Iran, the attacks on nuclear sites were particularly devastating. The main enrichment facility at Natanz suffered extensive damage to its above-ground buildings, disrupting power supplies. A nuclear research facility in Isfahan was also hit, with Israel claiming it was being used for military purposes. Beyond the nuclear program, Israel struck energy infrastructure, hitting the Sharan oil depot in Tehran and a natural gas processing plant in the massive South Pars field. These strikes caused huge fires and were a clear attempt to inflict economic pain on the Iranian regime, targeting the lifeblood of its economy. In Israel, despite the effectiveness of its air defenses, some Iranian missiles broke through. A residential building in the Tel-Aviv suburb of Ramat Gan was destroyed, and several homes were severely damaged. A missile landed near the Ministry of Defense complex in Tel Aviv, a symbolic strike at the heart of Israel's military establishment. The human cost was tragically real. In Israel, at least 3 people were killed, and over 170 were wounded. The toll in Iran was much higher, with Iranian officials reporting that at least 78 people were killed, including women and children, and over 320 were wounded in the Israeli airstrikes across the country. The conflict has inflicted a heavy human cost, shattering the lives of ordinary citizens in both nations. In Israel, the constant threat of missile attacks brought daily life to a standstill. The skies, once a symbol of freedom, became a source of fear. Families huddled in bomb shelters, schools were closed, and major public events were cancelled. The closure of Ben Gurion International Airport isolated the country, disrupting travel and commerce. The psychological impact is profound, with the wail of sirens serving as a constant reminder of the ongoing danger. The death of a young woman in her 20s in the Western Galilee, and the numerous injuries across the country, brought the reality of the war into Israeli homes. In Iran, the impact of the Israeli strikes was equally devastating and chaotic. Residents in major cities reported scenes of panic as explosions rocked their neighborhoods. Long queues formed at petrol stations as people feared fuel shortages, a direct consequence of the strikes on energy facilities. The internet became unstable, cutting off communication and access to information for many. The reports of dozens of civilians killed, including 20 children, spread grief and anger throughout the population. The destruction of homes and infrastructure left many displaced and facing an uncertain future, caught in a conflict orchestrated by leaders far removed from their daily struggles for survival and normalcy. The economic fallout from the attacks was immediate and global. On Friday, as news of the strikes broke, global oil prices surged by 9%, reflecting fears of a wider conflict that could disrupt the critical flow of oil from the Middle East. An Iranian general heightened these fears by threatening to close the Strait of Hormuz, a vital choke point for a significant portion of the world's oil supply. Stock markets around the world tumbled in response to the instability. The Dow Jones Industrial Average in the United States fell by over 700 points as investors fled to safer assets, worried about the potential for a prolonged and economically damaging war between two of the region's most formidable military powers. The leaders of both nations have remained defiant, their rhetoric fueling the cycle of violence. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu rejected international calls for restraint, vowing to intensify the attacks and boasting that his military had set back Iran's nuclear ambitions by years. His defense minister, Israel Katz, issued a stark warning to Iran's supreme leader, stating that Tehran will burn if the missile attacks did not cease. In response, Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian threatened a more severe retaliation if Israel continued its aggression, promising that his country would not stand down in the face of what he termed a blatant violation of international law and national sovereignty. The conflict immediately drew in the world's major powers, with the United States playing a pivotal, if complicated, role. The White House was briefed on Israel's plans for Operation Rising Lion, but publicly insisted it did not participate in the offensive strikes, framing it as a unilateral action by its ally. However, the United States provided crucial defensive support. United States Navy destroyers in the region, along with advanced Tayad and Patriot anti-missile batteries, were instrumental in helping Israel intercept the hail of Iranian missiles and drones. This dual approach allowed Washington to support Israeli security while attempting to distance itself from the initial act of aggression, trying to prevent a direct United States-Iran war. The diplomatic landscape was thrown into turmoil. A planned 6th round of indirect talks between the United States and Iran, aimed at reviving the nuclear deal and scheduled to take place in Oman on this very day, June 15th, was abruptly cancelled. An Iranian official declared that sitting down for negotiations after the Israeli attack would be unjustifiable. This collapse in diplomacy removes a critical off-ramp for de-escalation. leaving military action as the primary means of communication between the adversaries. Other nations, including Jordan, were physically drawn into the conflict, with the Jordanian Air Force shooting down Iranian projectiles that violated its airspace on their way to Israel. The international community's reaction has been one of alarm and calls for immediate de-escalation. European leaders, the United Nations, and regional Arab states have all urged restraint, fearing that a full-scale war between Iran and Israel would have catastrophic consequences for the entire world. The potential for miscalculation is extraordinarily high, with each retaliatory strike risking an even more devastating counter-response. The International Atomic Energy Agency confirmed it had detected no increase in off-site radiation from the targeted Iranian nuclear sites, offering a small sliver of relief amid fears of a nuclear disaster. But the danger remains acute. As of today, June 15, 2025, the region stands on a knife's edge. The direct state-on-state military exchanges have shattered a long-standing taboo, creating a volatile new reality. The conflict is a stark reminder of how deeply intertwined regional security is with global stability, affecting everything from energy prices to international diplomacy. The critical question now is whether the cycle of violence can be broken. Without an immediate and concerted diplomatic effort to pull both sides back from the brink, the path forward appears dark, threatening a wider war that no one can truly afford and whose ultimate consequences are impossible to predict.